Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're going to be talking about tactical and strategic BD for recruiters, the difference between them, and why you need them. Now, Mike, this is a show that follows on from last week, isn't it?
It most certainly does. We did those 7 pillars of a scalable recruitment business. One of those pillars was strategic and tactical BD, and I said, well, there's too much to talk about, in the 2 minutes that we have, so I'm going to do a whole show on it. And here we are, a whole show on it. Mega important, because I think this year probably business development would be a little bit more important than last year. Could be very important in certain sectors. And also, as you'll see in a moment or two, tactical BD doesn't necessarily work as well as strategic in a flatter market. So it's important to be able to do both.
Okay, now on that, Mike, you mentioned, shall we look at what your definition of the two is? Because everybody knows there are definitions as many, grains of sand in the sea than there are definitions.
You made that up, didn't you? Didn't
yeah,
think
I just made it up. But it sounded cool, didn't it? It sounded like it could have been real. But let's talk about tactical BD first. What do you mean when you say tactical BD?
Okay, I think we all know what tactical BD basically it is. Essentially, you're trying to get vacancies. You're vacancy scraping, or alternatively, you're speccing. You're speccing candidates in, and it's short term, as you said there. It's short term net revenue. Give us a job, give us a vacancy, or I've got this great candidate. Whether you do that telephone, email, or social media, or whatever, that's essentially it. And you're looking to get that short-term opportunity to make money. Strategic business development is much longer term, and what you're looking to do is really create high value relationships with high value clients. I mean, that's the bottom line. It takes a lot longer, and the revenues will come in a lot later down the line. So that's essentially it.
Okay, so looking at those, Mike, some people might be going, well, for me, I see the direct link between tactical BD and money. Tactical BD, money, which is, what makes your business run. So why would you bother with strategic BD?
Well, okay, so tactical business development. So the benefits of tactical BD. Can anyone hear my Pekingese just barking around the corner? She's trying to get in the door, leaving a bee, right? Tactical BD is very short term. It's transactional, right? So firstly, it's quite hard to win high value clients that way.
Just on that, just quickly, when you say high value clients, what do you mean? Do you mean like FTSE 500, real big companies? Is that what you mean?
No, I don't mean that. No, I mean, they may well be for your particular type of recruitment. You might be a volume supplier and fine. And that works for you. But larger companies tend to be lower value because the margins are tight and you've got to go through kind of intermediaries. You don't build relationships with hiring managers and so forth. It's harder to make money, basically. So it's not that. But it's, I'll tell you, three things really, three definitions or three checks on. First thing is they have a steady stream of the kind of vacancies that you can make good money on. You can nail them if you get them, right? So a steady stream of those, not just one-offs every now and again, but they come through. They treat their agencies well. So that they're not going to play one agency off against the other. They're actually going to value the agencies, bring them in and look after them. And lastly, of course, they pay a fee that you think is fair for the work that you put in. They're not looking to get your services for 2 bob and a conker. So that's a high value client. Now, that second point is quite important because when I first started in recruitment, my first job for the first 3 months was cold calling. My boss said, well, it's not much use. We don't really swear by it, but it'll teach you your job. And it did. But he said to me, when you do that, if you come across any of these targets that I give you that say, oh, well, no, thank you, because we have a bunch of agencies. So we have a preferred supplier list or a group of agencies that we like and trust and do a good job for us. So we don't need you. Make a note of those guys because they're targets. And I said, well, why would they be targets? They've just said they don't want to use us. He said, because we want to be in the circle with them.
You want loyal clients.
Exactly. We want to be having clients where other agencies ring in trying to flog them CVs or grab a vacancy that everybody else has got. And actually, they say no because we use Flair Recruitment or whoever it is. So harder to get, longer term kind of campaign, as you'll see, but so much more worth it when you get them. So you don't get that much with tactical BD.
Right. Okay.
Also, you very often get vacancies that everybody and his mother has got, so you probably.
Or they're really, really hard and no one's been able to fill.
Yeah, they've been out for a long time. So you're probably not going to get them exclusively unless you ring you just at the right time, which is possible, I suppose. And I have to say that it's like a treadmill. You can't get off. You find this with some 360s particularly, or not exclusively, but 360s a lot. They've got no work, so tactical BD, come on, gives a job. I've got this great candidate until they get a piece of work, then forget the BD, kind of trying to get this piece of work over the line, make some money. Got no work. Oh, well, and it's up and down, up and down. You see it quite a lot, really. You don't get that with strategic business development at all. So that's more of a merry-go-round. You get on, you speed it up, and you go round and round and round until you're sick, Kirsty.
Sick with money, sick with all the money that you have. Is that what you're saying?
Sick of all the money. Yes, no. So it's not perfect. And lastly, as I alluded to earlier, when supply and demand kind of even out a little bit, there's been a lot more supply than demand. When they even out a little bit, tactical business development doesn't work as well. It didn't work as well in the early 90s. It didn't work as well in 99, 2000. It didn't work as well in 2011. 2020 was different because there wasn't a recession. It wasn't a downtime. It's just we didn't know how to work with each other for a bit. Then we figured it out and we were all okay.
Yeah.
But if we have a downturn this year, which may happen, then it won't work as well again. And then where are you going to get your work from if your tactical BD doesn't work so well? So you need strategic as well as tactical. Very important.
I suppose strategic you can plan more on as well, because if you've got you have a longer sort of relationship pipeline, so you can sort of say, well, in 2 years, we'll probably have this business in or not. Whereas tactical, you have a much more short term sort of month by month planning really.
I think the other thing with vacancy scraping particularly, kind of everybody has to do it, or you might feed a couple of people around you, but that's it really. Where there's strategic BD, your average small to medium sized business might have one or two of them.
Okay.
Probably the owner, and as you'll see later, we're talking really about investing roughly about 20 minutes a day. I mean, that's what it takes to do this. So it's not particularly onerous, and you control when you do it. You control how you do it. It's very structured, very organized. I'm going to go through it with you in a second, but I do think that you need both, and that's really important to make that statement. Until your strategic business development has brought in a lot of high value clients, and the vacancies are coming in more than you're having to go out and get new clients with vacancies, you're going to need that tactical BD as well, for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I do think now is a good time to go into strategic, because as you said, I think most people here understand tactical BD. Most people have experienced it or perhaps are doing it right now. It's the strategic that we want to look at. So can we go into a little bit more depth about what kind of strategic BD involves, please?
Okay, yeah, got a little diagram. As most of you know, I'm not really big on like PowerPointy stuff, but this is just a cool way to kind of represent it. So it's 4 stages, all beginning with C. It's a weird thing.
Great.
I know, a bit like the 4 C's of marketing. Well, this is the 4 C's of strategic. I need to look at these whole names. I think I need to get that sorted out. Anyway,
come on, keep it moving, Michael.
Okay, so the first C is capture, right? So it's dead simple. It's the simplest thing in the world. You've got to identify a bunch of high value prospective clients and intermediaries if you happen to target intermediaries, so referrers of work, if that's your bag. Doesn't matter. They're both people really. And you're targeting the people here, not so much the companies. You have an ICP, an ideal client profile, which tells you, it's like an ICP, by the way, for those that don't know, it's like a grading system. It's not binary, kind of on or off, good or bad. It's a scale from like absolutely no good at all to be the best one in the possible world, and every single prospect will fit on there somewhere, and it's the criteria, the data that you gather, which tells you where it fits, and the better it is, the more you go for it, right? It's dead simple. So once you've defined your ideal client profile, you just need to find people that match it, and you can do that yourself. You can outsource it. There are offshore companies that will do that for you for a few £100, if you want them to, if your ICP is strong enough, because they can just go and search, mostly LinkedIn, but other places as well, to find these people. So that's not that difficult, and you just slap them into your CRM system as suspects. Now, the term suspect simply means, on the face of it, they'll probably be a good value, high value client, but we don't know for definite because we're not talking to them. Now that's easy. Anyone can do that. That's not a problem at all. This is the more difficult one, I feel, which is the connection. Because you've got a bunch of people out there. We've already said, let's bring you back to us, Kirst. We've got a bunch of people out there that we've already said, by their very nature, aren't really likely to want to talk to agencies. Not, we've got agencies. I'm busy. Might even got no vacancies right now, right? Okay, so with strategic business development, you're basically saying, I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking to build a relationship. I mean, this is the message, really. I've got a flavour, if you will, of recruitment. The way in which we do recruitment, I've got a flavour of it. And either, Mr. Client, you're going to like that flavour or you're not. If you're not, fine, you need to get down the road, or I need to get down the road. If you do like it, then okay, well, fine, we're not there yet. I'm going to spend some time building your confidence, a clarity on what we do, confidence that we can do it, trust in me as a person, and rapport in me as a person. There's 4 things, which is a relationship building process, which I'll talk about in a second. But all of that starts with a connection. All of that starts when they say, okay, I will talk to you, or you see them, or do something with them. Now, the way in which we do that is our old friend ADA, attention, interest, desire, and action. And we have an ADA campaign, which is built centrally. It's a tool. So like any other tool in this factory model, it de-skills the process. If you've got a strong ADA campaign, pretty much anybody can run it. You don't need special skills to start a conversation. You need to follow a framework and let the campaign do its job. And you know, because you've tested it, a percentage of people that you approach will start a conversation with you. You know that. It's no longer chance, it's statistics. So you have to have a strong enough campaign. And for those people who've not watched this show before, we do have previous programs on ADA and campaigns as well. So we do. So the connection is about starting that dialogue. Now, interesting, when you start the dialogue, let me bring the screen back up, right? One of 3 things will happen. Either they'll blank you, or you'll get through and they'll be downright rude to you, really. Well, if they're downright rude to you, you kind of think, well, okay, they're really valuable. Things change. I'll try again next year. Reset the reminder on the CRM system, forget about it. If you don't get through, then you might try them again in 6 months with a different campaign, because they'll never remember anyway, so I'll be fine. All right, so they're going to go into the CRM system with a reminder to look at them in 6, 9, 12 months. Forget it. If they want to engage, then you go to the engagement part where you basically do a pitch. And I'll talk about that in a second. What's interesting is about 45% on average of people that you approach with an ADA campaign, it's like, well, that's interesting. The campaign's strong enough. I don't want to engage now, but keep in touch. And they're going to split into keep in touch, call me back on this date, or just keep in touch, really.
Rumbling in the background, be there.
Yeah, we got something, but not enough, right? Again, it's about, like I said earlier, it's about clarity, building clarity to know what you do, confidence that you're good at what you do. Also a reason to use you, your USPs, differences. Else, why would they use you unless you're different in a good way to the existing suppliers that they have? Okay, and then rapport and trust is a personal thing, but they really should be there. And you do that during the next phase, which is the cultivation stage.
And this is, I think, the stage that is the biggest difference with strategic business development, because this is what most people don't do with that forgotten 45, we call it, don't we? These people regularly get forgotten about and left. And this is where the true power, I believe, of strategic business development lies.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's like, well, there's no money for me, I'm moving on. Potentially, there's 9 times as much money in this as there is in the 5% at any one point in time in any market who are ready to buy something, which is about, you go to 100 people, about 5% of it will talk to you on average. If you get your approach right, because they're looking to buy something, right? So there's potentially 5 times as much in here, in this group. And the other thing is, every quarter, a couple of more people drop out of this group into the I'm ready to engage now. If you haven't bothered to keep in touch, well, you're not going to get their work. Somebody else is going to get it. By putting them into a cultivation routine, it's got 3 tiers to it. We talked about it before on the show. If you put them into cultivation routine, 20 minutes a day, that's all it is. Eventually, they'll either move forward gradually to the last stage, which is the pitching stage, the conversion stage, or it'll become clear to you that this relationship is going nowhere. And there's a very specific way to do that. You know, when we do the webinar, I'm going to talk through that cultivation stage a lot. because it's really important. It's really important that you understand how you move people forward towards some kind of pitch or out.
Yeah.
And then conversion is pitch. Now, when we pitch for a piece of work, we're basically saying, give us an opportunity, give us a piece of work. This is a different kind of pitch. It's not the same. This kind of pitch is essentially saying, well, I've learned all this about you. I know this about you. This is me. This is how we could work together. A lock and a key. You're going to create the key, which is the pitch. They've got a lock, is what it is. If you get it right, you put that key and you turn it, you open the door to the room of riches. And that really, that was the room of riches. Can I use that one again, Kurt?
You can keep that one. You can keep the room of riches.
But that's what it is, right? It's the key that opens the lock, and that's your pitch. So it's not like you're persuasive, give us a piece of work or take this candidate and look at them. It's not that. It's much more layered than that, but it's not that difficult. In fact, just before we move on, really, none of those are that difficult, to be fair, to do.
You just have to have the right tools.
They're a process to follow, a framework, which is easy. I mean, that's pretty much it, what you've got there. And there's a bunch of tools, and then there's some dashboards which tell you what the heck's going on. So in an average size business, bring back to me for a second. In an average size business, say anywhere between, I don't know, sort of 8 to 28 people, one or maybe 1.5 or whatever people do that can feed the business, because it's the tools that makes a difference, particularly those 4 C's. You know, last week we talked about 4 C's of marketing, content, collateral, communications, and campaigns being in the connect phase there. Well, if you have those, if that pillar is up and running, this is relatively simple. Why? Because you've got something to talk about and something to engage, which isn't, get a job, have a candidate. Because if somebody doesn't have a vacancy, then that approach is going to fail. Whereas if your narrative is, I've got this thing you might be interested in, this piece of content, this event, this research that we've done or whatever, it starts a conversation whether they've got a need or not. So what you're doing in strategic business development essentially is taking out the timing, which tactical BD has to have in order to work, because you're pitching for something to make some money out of. And if that's not there, well, that pitch will fail. This, you're pitching to build a relationship. And also the approaches that you make, the conversations that you have originally, they're warm calls for a start. That's the first thing to say. And you've got something, depending on what the campaign is that you've built, you've got something which is going to engage that person because they've come all the way through. They're okay with talking to you about it. They know what it is, right? So essentially, you're already halfway down the track. Don't forget, with any kind of business development, there are 3 things really. The first thing is you've got to get to speak to the decision maker, one way or the other, whether it's tactical or strategic. Okay, you've got to have something to say which is going to pass the so what test. Right? Else, you know, if it's like, everyone says that or whatever. And at the other end, you've got to have some proof that what you've just said is true. Yeah, if you've got those 3 things, you stand a bloody good chance of being successful, tactical or strategic. In strategic, you just have longer. Yeah, longer.
That's the other thing I love about strategic is we spoke about tactical very much as peaks and troughs. Well, because you've got those stages and you sort of have planning around them within strategic, it means that, you know, too much growth is just as bad for a company as not enough. So if you're going through a phase where you're thinking, oh, we're running a bit hot, you just slow down some of the zones that you've got in your tactical, in your strategic, sorry.
You choose when you go for the pitch, because what you're pitching for is the right to supply, really. And that could be formal on the list panel, or if you're targeting smaller businesses that don't have official PSLs or panels, it's essentially give me permission to supply. When an opportunity comes up, you'll consider me. And you can choose really when you make that pitch, pretty much, you're quite right. I mean, they may come to you and say, well, okay, you know, I really like what you've been saying. Okay, let's talk. And that's fine, but you have to manage that process as best as you can. But that's a nice situation to have, isn't it? I think
it's a lovely situation, and not one that most people would complain about, I feel.
No, it isn't. I tell you, I've had the advantage over the years of 3 instances in my career where I have been the subject of agency attention. In other words, I controlled something the agencies wanted, which was access to vacancies. 2 of them when I was contracting, because give it to the contractor because we can't be asked to do it. Therefore, you get all the agency calls and they don't. And when I was at my first business, we created one of the first MSPs in this country, 1994 actually, a company called Arcam. And so we had a lot of agencies because we were the managing agent for a lot of big companies in those days. And the agencies soon find that out and they target you. And I tell you the interesting thing about that experience. I mean, it's massively useful for us as a business to understand about how to approach people because they say the same old thing, really. There's no creativity, there's no spark, there's no reason to engage with them or talk to them. You know,
Or they try and trick you. That's a common one.
Lie to you and trick you and pretend that someone said that so and so they should speak.
Think you're stupid.
Really? I mean, how strategic can you not be? How short term? No. So I think if we just quickly go back to that slide, if you don't mind,
we will.
If you can build one of these in your business, and by the way, to build it isn't difficult, and certainly not to run it. It's cheap as chips. I mean, literally, it's time predominantly when you have all your collateral and your content in place. One person for you can probably feed your business, and you're going to get every now and again, I don't know what frequency, once or twice a year, a big old client dropping into the client estate, and then the vacancies roll from that. So you need both of them, because if you don't have both of them, then I think in the next year or so, it might be a bit sticky, is what I think.
Yeah. I also like the idea that you say that, you know, that big client drops in, because when that happens, you may get an influx of work and it's much easier to manage your team as well. Whether you're a solopreneur who has a virtual team or whether you are somebody who has, you know, groups of people in this country, I think it's so often that you either have a team that runs really hot, who gets, you know, overworked and is unhappy and wants to leave, or you get kind of a team who's like playing around, they've got nothing to do. Whereas when you do this, it helps you manage almost every single stage of the difficulties of being a business owner.
We've both worked in agencies where we've seen that work, I know, and certainly I owned a couple, really. But it is just to kind of, we've got to move on now to other things. But if you don't have a strategic business development function within your company, I think it's very hard work to grow.
Yeah.
I think you are dependent then upon people to bring work in. If they're not very good at it, it's going to be hard if the market flattens out. Whereas if you build something that you know works, because you know it works, it's been built to work based on sound principles, and perhaps you as the owner operate it, or one of your key people who's tied in with shares operate it, they're not going to go anywhere. The facility to win clients isn't going anywhere. It's a safe decision within your business. You're much less likely to become one of those yo-yo companies where you grow and shrink, because a lot of the people that bring in your business development have just left. And it is a process. So even if your BD are left, just put someone else in charge. It's not that difficult to do, you know, at the end of the day. So I know I feel so passionate about this because I see so many companies who don't have a strategic business development function in their business. And you can see the symptoms there. And you know that if there is a flattening in the market, it's going to hurt. It hurt in 2010 when they didn't have it. It hurt in 1999, 2000. It hurt in early 90s, and it shouldn't. There's no need for it to do that. So now we are going to talk about all of this in the webinar.
I was just going to mention that
fairly soon, I think. If you can just show that, Kirst. So just a reminder for everybody, and then we're coming to top tips and various things. Now, what we've just done today, obviously, is that one. We'll be going down to the next level of detail on the show, because it's an hour and a half. As you can see, it's 90 minutes. If you have clicked the attend button to come here, you don't need to do anything. You will get an invitation from us. You can read it, and if you want to come, you just register and come. If you're watching this show and we don't know about you, then you must email webinar to mike@flair.co.uk, and I will send you an invitation, and then you can have a look.
Just a reminder, it is free. You know, we're not going to do anything with you, but we are going to show a bit more about how all this fits together and go to deeper depth on it. So
I'm very, very keen to do this, because the reason that this factory model works is because all of those pillars interrelate to each other. And they're of a state where most people have got those pillars in place in their business, but actually it's just about okay for what they are now. Nowhere near sophisticated enough to where they want to be next. You should build a business which is big enough for you to grow into, because then growth is smooth, and that's what we want you to do. So it's very important.
Exactly. It's like buying a school blazer when you're a teenager. You grow it with growing room. That's what you get. Okay, Mike. Now, this is sort of my favorite period, because this is where we kind of give things that are more practical to people. So, you know, if people are thinking, I want to start the process of strategic BD, what do they need to do? What is it they need to do?
You start with the ideal client profile. It's more important than anything else, because you're basically going to focus your entire machine on a group of people, usually in batches of 10 is what you normally do, move them through the process in batches. And so they'd better be the right people. So get that ICP right. ICP split into two. Some of the criteria are against the company and the way they buy and the sort of location they are and the size they are, blah, blah, blah. Some of them are to do with the decision maker and how they see agencies and the kind of person that they are, right? So, but you define the ICP, and once you've done that, you can do stage one very simply, which is to capture those names. And you've made a start. You're up and running.
And we're a big fan of that. Now, I'm going to come to the tactical BD tip in a minute. But before then, Mike, I want to talk about who we've got on the show next week, which I believe is Dave Jenkins.
Yes, the great Dave Jenkins from Wave. He's going on board to talk to us about getting great candidates. Now, I don't care what state the market it is. It's always difficult to get good candidates, I think. I have to say, I don't think it's particularly an easy thing to do. Dave's a specialist in the job boards, usage of tech that sits around it, so on and so forth. So he's going to come on board the show, and hopefully he's going to help us, or you, not so much me, to be able to get your hands on better candidates and make the most of your advertising budget on the job boards. We're obviously very keen on that. So
because they aren't getting cheaper, are they? Exactly. Okay, now Mike, we obviously spoke a lot. Not are they? We spoke a lot today about strategic business development, but you also said that you do have to do some tactical elements to it, particularly, you know, if you're starting out in this process. So what's your top tactical tip? It's a tongue twister, isn't it?
Oh, there's quite a few here I could have chosen, but I've gone with one. And I suppose this stems from that period, particularly at Arkham, where I would get 4 or 5 calls a day from agencies. Mm-hmm. You have to have 2 compelling reasons that pass the so what test why people use you. Believable, if necessary, with proof. This is why people use us. Now, it's not enough in many cases to swing it, but without that, it's honestly, you're going to be right at the bottom end of the barrel, scraping around for pieces of work. 2 strong reasons. People use us because of this. So, you know, I said there's 3 bits, but you can squash a 4th one in. So I've got to get to talk to the decision maker. I've got to be able to offer them something which is compelling, a little different or something. And I've got to be able to say, oh, and this is why you use us. And that is different to their current suppliers, or at least rare. They don't get it from all of their current suppliers. And then proof that what you've just said is true. If you can do that, you stand a much greater chance of getting something from them. Or obviously, I know this isn't a top tip because we all know this, but I'll point it out as well. Speccing is by far and away the most effective, if you do it properly, the most effective form of tactical BD. So maybe you do a bit more of that.
Okay, Mike, I think that we are pretty much coming to the end of today's show, which has been fantastic. I love it because I think so many people would have said to not do tactical and only do strategic. But I really like the fact that both of them have their place in the world of BD.
They do. Well, in a scalable business, in that factory model, that little box number 4, they both need to be in there. But in many cases, they're not. There's only tactical. And I like good tactical, strong tactical BD, but it's got its up points and it's got its down points. So, you know, it's important to have both and to make it work with the rest of the stuff that you do. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, fantastic. So, as always, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. Thank you so much for being here today. And Mike, you've been absolutely top notch today.
Did we notice as well, I've got a bit of a Barry White thing going on because I had a cold and I think my voice, I think it sounds better actually. I think
I'm sure the audience has loved it. It's, you know, it hides that yam twang that we all know and love, doesn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And we'll see you all next week, guys.
We will indeed.